All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for tonight's team call. So, just some announcements. All month long, we have some awesome promotions. So, we have the 2B Mindset promotion for $20 off. So, something that I thought of today, which is not that mind blowing, but I'm going to go back to all those people from when 2B Mindset launched and let them know that 2B Mindset is on sale again. So, if you have people that were interested in 2B Mindset when it first launched. I forget when it launched. But those are great people to go back to and let them know that it's $20 off for this month. Office hours with Alana. I think that's on her page, but you can look at these FAQs and pull that up. So she's going to be talking about nutrition. Obviously, that's going to go along with 2B Mindset as well. All month long, they extended the price. With Lift 4 and Mes de Mas, $10 off. All month long, too, is 10% off Beach Bars. So if your husband and kids are eating them all, now's the time to hop on it. August 7th, I think is today, right, is the last day to request access into Lift 4. But those were people that had to have purchased by July 31st. I didn't know this one. Anyone getting the 2B Mindset certification? I think that's an awesome just added bonus that people can see that you have and, give yourself a little bit of a edge over other coaches too. So you can do that today. Fit for Two. So the pre and postnatal workouts, they're going to be added onto Beachbody On Demand. I believe it's going to be 4 different workouts. That's going to launch on August 20th. And then August 31st for any UK coaches. I know I had some prospects in the UK that I found on Instagram. I sent them I think it's like a dinner that Carl is doing for the UK people. So you can kind of let them know, hey, just something to excite people. So if you know any UK people or that want to sign up, that might be a great way to get them intrigued. Team announcements. So on the top of our banner page, on our team page, right here, you'll see that we have the August 20th. We have a 3-day refresh and Shakeology with Clean Week info and kind of challenge, all thrown into one. We'll definitely be talking about that more and how that's going to work. But it's going to be 3-day refresh. We're going to kind of do what we did last time, get all your prospects in a group, give them all information, and then kind of walk them through the 3-day refresh, whether they're going to start on the 20th or start on the 21st or 22nd. They're all going to get that 3-day information, right? Or if they want to do Clean Week instead, make it 7 days. It's going to just be that jumpstart that people need, especially at the end of August when people have been not so great during the summertime. And then we also are starting our team Lift 4 prep for our second round that we're doing July 27th. And guys, if you are doing your marketing calendar and seeing all right, August 20th or August 27th doesn't work for me for my goals. So meaning if you need to invite people earlier or get your people into a group earlier, then by all means, start your own groups, buddy up together, get your success partner and start something earlier. So join us, join the team, right? But don't feel like you can't create your own things, because you absolutely can. And then we did that. I went to the Rachel Hollis movie. I went with Dawn on, what was it, last Thursday, I think it was. Guys, that thing was freaking awesome. Really just great way to fire yourself up, get your mindset shifted if you've been in a hole from the summer or anything, get to it. There's another one on Monday. I signed up for her one of her conferences in Texas just because I was there. I was you know what, I'm just going to do it, right? It was amazing. So make sure that you get to go to the movies, right? Get some people to go with you. And then August 20th, I'm doing a beach day at my house, dinner. If you guys want to stay over the night before or after, whatever. It's not really going to be business oriented. It's just going to be hanging out with each other. So let me know. I do have like an event thing in the team page. I'll be posting in that of like where we're going to go for dinner if you guys just want to meet there, or where we're going to be in Avalon if you want to just do that as well. Kids are welcome, so don't feel like you can't bring your kids. You can. All right, so tonight we have an awesome speaker, Carol. If you guys don't know Carol, she's a part of our team. Let me just pull up all her stats. So she is a diamond coach. She is going to talk about a topic that she really knows a lot about tonight. She is a psychologist. She has her own practice, and she's working Beachbody part-time and doing that part-time. And she is working her butt off to do Beachbody full-time. Let's see. She's been coaching for 3.5 years, actively working for 2.5. So if you guys have those people who are just challengers and you're like, like they would make the perfect coach, don't give up on them, because there's a lot that just start off as challengers and then will become coaches. So Carol, without further ado, thank you for doing this tonight. I'm really excited to kind of get all your tools.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here too. So let me just see if I can pull up my slides here. Are we good? Okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
You're good.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for having me speak. As you mentioned, I was introduced to Beachbody. I was a customer, and I came in basically to work on my own journey. And when my friend Lisa was telling me all about the different options, and she mentioned to me, you could sign up as a customer, you could sign up, there's this coach opportunity. And as soon as she started telling me about it, I said, yep, sign me up as that. That's definitely something that's up my alley. And it's very similar to what I'm already doing in my practice. And I can definitely see myself doing that. But I need to have my own experience first. So I took a couple of months to start my own journey and get familiar with the program. And then I jumped in a couple months later, and my friend Lisa introduced me to her upline, who was Lisa Hansen. And Lisa taught me everything that I needed to know to get me where I am today. So what I love about the business is that so much of what I do as a psychologist is very related and really helps me work on myself to keep myself in check, and also helps me work with my customers and my coaches. And so I wanted to share some of my favorite psychologist tricks today that are so relevant to the business. And I think you're all going to love them. So this is all about diving deeper into the mindset blocks. So as you all know, coaching is a journey of many, many ups and downs. The ups can be really up, and the downs can be down, and they can be really hard to deal with, and it's just a fact of life. And I find it so important to be on the lookout for the obstacles that might be getting in your way, so that they don't become blind spots and they don't derail you, or they don't lead you to get stuck and procrastinate and not take any movement forward. But if you're on the lookout and you have a plan for what to do with them, then you minimize their presence in your life and you just increase your chance of success. So we talk a lot about personal development. Personal development is so huge for doing just that, for keeping your mind in the right mindset, for staying positive and being able to focus on success and moving forward. And for the most part, when we talk about personal development, it's about reading or maybe listening to audio, which I love. And the way that I think about it is, those tickers that you see on the news feed, I kind of picture that we have those tickers going through our mind. And sadly, a lot of us have negative tickers. And so there's this negative chatter that just goes across and across your mind. And it's just there. It's in the background all day long, all night long, and it can really sabotage you. So we do personal development, and we read books, and we listen to audio to try to input more positivity onto that ticker. And hopefully what you find is that the more positive input you have, the less room there is for the negative. You basically squeeze out room for the negative, and it can be really, really powerful. One of my favorite expressions related to that is that we have the power to change the channel. So once you notice that you're on that negative channel, you can say, stop, that's not helping me. I need to get off that channel and hop onto a more positive one. And the little nuggets that you get from personal development, even if you listen for 5 minutes a day and you get one little nugget and it just sticks with you and it helps you change the channel and stay where you want to be, that's so valuable, so that you're able to take the action that you need to take in order to succeed. So that's all great. The personal development that we usually talk about is all great and so helpful, but I want to take us a little bit deeper and talk about strategies that will really help you change your mindset. So you might be aware that, yes, the chatter is getting negative, or you might be aware of the feeling, I'm feeling kind of down, I'm feeling discouraged. And it's really important to pinpoint what the actual thoughts are that are going through your mind that might be getting in the way, so that you can do something about them. So I wrote some thoughts here, some negative thoughts that can pop up. You can wave your hand if you want, if you relate to these. I know I relate to, I think, all of them. Things like, I'm being a pain with all of my follow-ups. This person isn't going to say yes. Don't bother inviting them. Who am I to invite people to a challenge group? I don't know how to word my invite perfectly, so I'm not going to do it. I don't have time to send invites. I'm going to offend her by inviting her to a fitness group. And I'm not at my goal weight, so people won't be inspired by me, so I shouldn't invite them. Anyone relate to these? Yeah. So they can really derail us. If you don't pay attention to them and do something about them, they can really derail us. Okay, so this is the basic model that I wanted to talk about. It looks a little convoluted, but I'm going to explain it to you. If you've ever been in your own therapy, or you think of examples that you've seen on TV or in the movies when they show a therapist, it's usually not talking about this, and it's usually talking about old school Freudian therapy, where you lie on the sofa and talk about your childhood, and that's very important, very helpful. What I do is something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very much focused on what's going on today. So what's going on with all these different components, the situation that you're in, the thoughts that you're having, the feelings that you have, how that impacts your behavior, and how all of those work together to lead to either a positive or negative outcome. I have in here, we're not going to talk a lot about it, but I think it is important to acknowledge that early childhood is in the middle in there, and it definitely affects us in all of these areas. It might lead us to put ourselves in certain situations. We might have learned to think certain ways because of our childhood experiences or people we learned from as children. We might have learned to feel a certain way, or to channel a large number of feelings into one familiar but yet unhelpful feeling. We certainly learn to behave a certain way when we get into similar situations, or we may have modeled how other people behave when they feel a certain way. And again, all of those work together to lead to a positive or negative outcome. So the good news is that once you become aware of how all of this is working, you can make changes in any one of these areas. And it's some law of physics. When you change any one part of a system, then the whole system has to change, and it can't work in the same way anymore. So there's a lot we could talk about in terms of how you change each of these elements. But today what I'm going to talk about is the thoughts. And they're so, so powerful, and how you can learn to be more aware of them, and how you can make changes, and then you change this whole system. So back in the 1960s, there was a psychiatrist by the name of Aaron Beck, and he was working with primarily depressed patients. And what he noticed, he was really one of the first to notice this, was that when people were depressed, they tended to have common thought patterns. They tended to see the world in similar ways. They tended to look at themselves with similar patterns. And he said, you know what, I think this is really important. I think we need to look at the thoughts that people are having. And if we can help them change their thoughts, then we might help them heal from depression or whatever other ailment they have. So come to find out, this was revolutionary, and it changed the whole field of psychiatry and psychology. And subsequent researchers and clinicians have applied what he learned with depression to all sorts of problems: anxiety, ADHD, stress, marriage, relationships, anything, you name it, it's all relevant. And what's really fascinating is that when thoughts are unhelpful, they tend to be unhelpful in similar ways. They tend to fall into similar patterns across the board. So I'm going to go through, there are about 10 or 12 different categories or ways in which thoughts can be unhelpful. And it's really helpful to look at this specifically and understand how and why thoughts can be unhelpful so that you can then change them. So the first category is called all or nothing thinking. You see things in black and white categories or extreme categories. So if you think of how that can affect our business, you can most certainly have thoughts like, I have to send 50 invites or it's not worth it at all. So don't get started if you don't have time to do all of that. And we know that that's not true, that something is always better than nothing. Overgeneralization, you see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern. So if you have one person who says no to you, then the negative thought related to that could be everybody's going to say no, or everybody's saying no, everybody's jumping ship, and then you get yourself into a really negative place that's not helpful. Mental filter, you pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively, overlooking other positive aspects of the situation. So imagine if you spoke to 20 people and you got 19 people who were either interested or said, maybe get back to me in another month, and you have one person who said, no way, I would never do anything like that. Well, if you put on that mental filter and all you do is focus on that one person, you're going to walk away with a biased feeling, a negative feeling that really is not representative of the true situation, and in the end is really not helpful. The next one is fortune telling. You anticipate that things will turn out badly and you feel that your prediction is a predetermined fact. So you might have your own thoughts about different people. Oh, well, this person does CrossFit, so there's no way that she would want to join me, so I'm not even going to bother asking her. Well, in fact, you have no idea if that's true, and chances are it's not true. And so it doesn't help to make those assumptions about how things are going to work out when you take your action. Magnification and minimization. This one's a little bit similar to some of the others, and in fact, they all overlap a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's really not going to be important that you pinpoint exactly which negative thought pattern you're falling into. But as you're learning more about this, it is really helpful to go through them specifically and understand the different nuances. So magnification and minimization, you exaggerate the importance of things such as your mistake or someone else's achievements, or you inappropriately shrink things until they appear tiny, such as your own desirable qualities or others' imperfections. So the comparison game, we talk a lot about that and how detrimental that can be to your own business. So you may overly exaggerate someone else's success and fail to look at your own success, and then you're going to feel demoralized. You'll be less likely to take the action to build your business. Catastrophizing, you attribute extreme and horrible consequences to the outcomes of events. So this pertains to the thought, I don't want to invite this person, I'm going to offend them, and then I'm going to ruin the friendship, and I'll be devastated that friendship is over. Well, in fact, the chance of that happening is probably pretty slim. Yeah, maybe somewhere along the line there's going to be someone who might be mildly annoyed, but chances are you can work through that and it's not going to end the friendship. But going into it thinking that there will be this catastrophic outcome is not going to help you take action. Emotional reasoning, you assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things are. I feel it, so it must be true. Well, that's the really sneaky thing about emotions, is they feel very real. If you feel anxious, if you feel uncomfortable, then you really believe that there's something wrong with the situation and something bad is going to happen. But in fact, emotions can be totally biased. They can be related to old situations, irrelevant situations, and they lead you to think one way about the situation, and it really may not be true. So it's important to tap into the more rational side of your brain and use that to override the more emotional, sometimes irrational side of the brain. The next one is disqualifying the positive. You reject positive experiences by insisting that they don't count for some reason or another. In this way, you can maintain a negative belief that's contradicted by your everyday experiences. So again, if you take that example, let's say you invite 20 people and you get 15 people who say yes and you get 5 people who say no. Well, if you disqualify those positives and all you do is you focus on the negatives, you walk away with a certain conclusion that's really not accurate. It's going to, again, lead you to stall out in your actions that you need to take. Jumping to conclusions, it's related to that fortune telling. You make a negative interpretation, even though there are no definite facts that convincingly support your conclusion. And mind reading, also kind of similar. You arbitrarily conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you and you don't bother to check this out. Oh my God, how many times have we thought this when we send a message and we don't hear back from someone and we have all sorts of ideas in our mind of what's going on? I offended them, they're mad at me, they think I'm just one of those other people who's selling something on social media and now they don't want to talk to me anymore. And you really can run away with those negative thoughts. Last page, the should statements. You try to motivate yourself with shoulds and shouldn'ts as if you need to be punished before you could be expected to do anything. Well, if you wake up in the morning and you say, oh my God, I really should send these invites today, I really need to do this, that doesn't feel very motivating at all. But if instead you wake up and you say, hey, I'm really excited to send these invitations today, I know there are people out there who need my help and they want to hear from me, well, now that feels really different, and now you feel much more motivated to take the action that you need to take. Labeling and mislabeling. It's an extreme form of overgeneralization. Instead of describing an error, you attach a negative label to yourself or others. So let's say something doesn't go great. Let's say you blew off one day of your workout. Maybe you even blew off 2 days of your workout. If you walk away and say, I'm a failure, I can never stick to any program, when in fact you've worked out for 9 days leading up to that, it's really an unhelpful conclusion that you draw that's going to lead you to feel really badly about yourself, and that's not going to work well for your own journey and for your business. Personalization, you see negative events as indicative of some negative characteristic of yourself or others, or you take responsibility for events that were not your doing. Again, this is kind of like the mind reading. If other people have a reaction and you own that and you believe that that reflects you in some way rather than putting it back on the other person, it reflects something about them, their own hesitancy, their own fears. It feels very different if you're putting that back on them. And at the end of the day, if you really can't figure out in what way a thought is unhelpful, you can just decide that this is maladaptive thinking. This is just unhelpful. You're focusing on a thought that may be true or might have some element of truth, or maybe there's a chance that it could be true, but you have no control over it, and excessively thinking about it can be self-critical, or it can, more importantly, distract you from taking the action or engaging in the behaviors that you need to engage in. So let me pause here. I know that's a lot to go through all those different thinking areas, and you might want to go back. These slides will be available, right? Or we can make them available. And I can also post a handout of these. So it's really helpful to go back and read this list. And what you'll probably find is that you'll see that some of these patterns repeat, that when your own thoughts start to get negative, they tend to fall into maybe one or two categories over and over and over again. And so the good news is that when you do some work with one example, then you'll find that work really helps you across the board, because that's your general pattern. This is also a really great tool, not only to help yourself with your own business, but this is also a great tool that you can work on with the other coaches that you're mentoring, and helping them become familiar with these different thinking errors and the different ways that thoughts can be unhelpful. And it's really great to know yourself and to know these are the ways in which my thoughts can become unhelpful for me, and I need to be on the lookout for that. So let me just pause. Anyone have any questions so far, or anything you want me to go back and clarify? I'm happy to do that before I go on. Just waiting. Okay, so now we've increased your awareness. You know a lot more about negative thoughts. And what I want to emphasize is that there's an incredible power to putting pen to paper. So yes, we listen to PD, and it's great to have those nuggets in your head, and it's great to have these observations in your mind about some of the pitfalls you could fall into, but something very different happens when you put pen to paper, and you really work it out, and you really write out the whole sentence of what's going on in your mind, and really try to analyze, is this thought helpful, and what kind of effect is it having on me? Once you see it on paper, all of a sudden it looks very different, and you'll feel much more empowered to do something different with that thought. So what I'm going to do is teach you a strategy for working through these thoughts. And what I say to my clients that I work with is that if you learn one thing from me, I hope it's this. We call this a thought record. And if you learn how to use a thought record, how to monitor for negative thoughts and how to challenge them and come up with more helpful thoughts, then this will affect your life in so many ways, and you'll never be the same. You can really permanently change how your mind works. So it's such an awesome tool, and I think it will be really helpful for all of us as well. So it basically is the same as that model that I showed you that went around in a circle, but now we're going to look at it in columns. So we're going to look at how a given situation can lead you to think a certain way, and how, depending on what your thoughts are, you're going to feel a certain way. And those thoughts may be helpful thoughts, they might be accurate, or they might match up to those thinking errors that we were talking about, and you need to know about that. And once you realize the ways in which these thoughts might be helpful, you can then take a step back, tap into rational brain, and come up with a more rational response that's going to be more helpful in the long run. Okay. So I wrote out an example here, and this is so you can see how this all works. Actually, I'm going to back up for a minute. I forgot to say this. So when we look at this model, we talked about situations and how situations, in a given situation, you have a certain thought, and depending on your thoughts, you're going to feel a certain way. Well, really what's happening when most people start this whole process, they're really aware of this connection. I'm in a certain situation and I feel a certain way. I'm sitting down at my computer and I feel anxious, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel a sense of dread. Most people aren't really aware of what those specific thoughts are, but it's really important to be able to specify them and pick them out of your head. So if we go back here to this worksheet, what I usually recommend is that you start here with the situation. So what did I say here? The situation is I'm avoiding sending out my invites, and then go over to this third column and write down the feelings that you're having. What does that bring up when you sit down to do these invites? What does that bring up? And can you rate the intensity on a scale of 0 to 10? 10 being the most intense you could feel that way, 0 being the least. Then once you have that clearly documented, then you can go back and you can try to identify what are the specific thoughts that I'm having. What is it that's really going through my mind that's then leading me to feel this way? So then you write it, then you have the thoughts. So you have your situation, the thoughts, the feelings. Then you take these individual thoughts and you go back to that list of thinking errors and take a look and say, does this thought make sense? Is it helpful, or does it match up to one of these thinking errors? Maybe it even matches up to more than one, and you might want to write that down as well. So in this column here, you would write down whatever thinking errors these thoughts match up to. Or you might say, you know what? No, I think this thought really is true. It might still be kind of negative, but it might objectively be true. And then we have to do something else with that, which we'll get back to. I'm going to jump ahead for a moment. So let me walk you through the example. So I'm avoiding sending the invites, and I'm feeling the sense of dread. The first number here is my initial intensity. So I feel dread at about a 10, anxiety at a 10, disappointment with myself at about a 7, fear about an 8, guilt 6, and jealous 7. So now I have to go back and say, okay, what is going through my mind that's making me feel this way? And the thoughts might be, I keep getting no's, so why bother? I don't have time today to send all these invites. I'll be embarrassed if people say no. I'll piss off my friends. There's so many people selling products on social media. I'll just be one of those annoying people as well. So, okay, now that I have these thoughts, I can go back to the list of thinking errors and decide, are these helpful, or do they match up with the thinking error? And so what I wrote here was emotional reasoning, jumping to conclusions, mind reading, and mental filter. Again, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if you figure out exactly what kind of thinking error it matches up to, as long as you can basically say this is an unhelpful thought. So where do you go from here? Now you have this awareness, and now you have a better understanding of what's going on in your mind. What can you do with that? So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to one more step in the process. This is where you take one thought at a time. This first unhelpful thought, there's so many people selling products on social media. I'll be just another annoying person. And the question you want to ask yourself is there evidence that supports this thought? And is there any evidence that does not support this thought? Evidence that supports this thought? Yes, there are a lot of people selling on social media now. If I think about it, in the past 3 years, I've had maybe 2 people say negative things about Beachbody posts being annoying. And I've myself have been annoyed when I randomly get a message from someone trying to sell me something on social media. So yes, there's a little evidence to support this thought that people are selling products on social media and someone might find me annoying. Is there any evidence that doesn't support this thought? Well, I've had so many people tell me that I inspire them. They look forward to my posts. I make a difference for them. I've changed many people's lives. I know that for myself, I keep the focus on adding value to others. And if other people are annoyed or some people are annoyed, then that's about them and that's not about me. I can always continue to learn how to share well on social media so that I'm not one of those annoying people. And I know that coaching has completely changed me and my life and my future for me and my family. So if along the way I annoy a couple of people, I'm willing to take that risk to get so much out of it. So now I have a more balanced viewpoint. I take that negative thought and now I can say there's some evidence over here that supports it, but there's a whole lot of evidence that suggests this thought is really not valid and it's really not a helpful one. So now I can go back up here and I can try to identify what are some rational responses that I can input into my mind that are going to be more helpful than these negative ones. We all know this one. Every no gets me closer to yes. The right person will be thrilled by my invite. I may be saving someone's life and turning it around. I can handle the no. I just have to move on. And I'm adding value. And I can sit down with my calendar and I can plan out my time and problem solve. So now if I imagine that these are the thoughts that are going through my mind, now I go back and I re-rate, well, how do I really feel in the situation? Well, now my sense of dread is more like a 3. My anxiety is down to a 4. My disappointment is a 2. My fear is a 4. My guilt is a 3. My jealousy is a 4. Wouldn't it be great if they were all zeros? Yeah, of course it would be. But we know that that's not realistic, that we're not going to completely eliminate all these negative feelings, but there's a really big difference. If you go from an 8, 9, or 10 down to a 2, 3, 4, maybe even a 5, you can work with that. You can tolerate that. You can sit with that. You can put it aside and try to focus on taking action. And the action is what's going to really change your situation. So going from those high numbers, 8, 9, 10, down to a 2, 3, 4 is a really, really great outcome from this process. Okay, so action steps. So where do you go from here? So now you have this awareness and now you understand how negative thoughts can play such an important role in how you feel. And both of those together impact the action that you take. And ultimately it's action that builds your business. So you can learn to notice these patterns, especially when they come up with procrastination. You can put pen to paper and really examine these negative thoughts. Do they really make sense? Are they really helpful? Or is there a more rational response that I can say to myself that is going to make me feel better, and then I'll be in a better place to take action? Like I said, you still might be left with some discomfort, so you can work with that. You can talk to your upline, talk to your success partner, talk to a friend, talk to a significant other. You can problem solve, you can plan out your calendar, you can make sure you're tracking your successes to make sure you're paying attention to the positivity that is coming in. So I find it really helpful to save those messages in a file or to set up a separate Facebook group where you can easily copy and paste all the positive messages you get. So if you're feeling in a funk and if all you can see are the no's, then you can go back and take a look at all those yeses and all the words of inspiration that you have received, and that will really help you offset the no's. And then one of the really awesome things that you can do is to write out these rational responses, which are basically your affirmations. So if you do anything like a miracle morning routine, a gratitude journal, affirmations is such an amazing part of a morning routine where you write out the rational response that you got to at the end of that worksheet. And you write it over and over and over again. And at first, it might just seem like words, and you might not really buy into it, and you emotionally might not really feel it. But you write it and write it and write it. And what you'll notice is that over time, it starts to sink in. And there's a little part of you that starts to believe yeah, I think maybe this could be true. And then the more you write it, again, time goes on and you start to really believe it. You take more action, the actions support it. And the next thing you know, this is just how you see yourself. This is how you see the world. And you've changed your belief system. So that's what I have for you. It's one really, really powerful tool that can be so helpful for you in your business and can be helpful as you help your other coaches succeed. And really, it's something you can use in any part of your life, whether it's stress, whether it's feeling overwhelmed, whether it's anxiety, depression, anything. It's an awesome tool that you can use. So I hope you found it helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions or go back if you want me to walk through any part of it again. I'm happy to do that as well.
I love this. This was such like this stuff I love. Kind of reminds me of like Tony Robbins a little bit. He definitely like uses like the same like your thoughts create your actions and your behaviors. And the way that you listed it was so smart because I would like everything that you said. I was like, oh, I could see like myself in those like certain situations, and doing that made it kind of funny. I'm like, oh yeah, like it kind of like takes the seriousness out of like those like negative thought patterns, and you're like, oh yeah, like I do that, and like that's kind of ridiculous that I do that. My question is, like sometimes I'll be in a situation where like that person like needs to like not do that. Like, how do you go from? I mean, I guess like you do this for a living, so people kind of expect it from you. You know what I mean?
Oh.
But like, how could I say like stop? Like, I know I can control my actions, but like how? Like, I know like it's hard to control someone else's actions, or like you see that they like are in like one of these like thought patterns, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Are
how do
you
you?
thinking a coach that you're working with or a friend or who you
Yeah, just like either or. Like I feel like with the coach, you can sometimes call them out, you know, but with like others, like I'm more or less thinking of like a customer, right? Like sometimes you get those customers that are just like so negative. And I'll send them like the energy bus. So I'll send them like personal development because that's obviously like a place that they need to work on. But like with this, it's like cool because you can like really pinpoint like where they're falling into. But like, how do you do that without being like, hey, like?
So, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that as I was putting this together, and I was thinking about some of the people in my challenge group too, where it can be so frustrating because it's usually easier for an outside person to see the negative pattern than it is for the person who's in it. So you could take parts of this and you could share it with your challenge group, and you could put it out there for everyone, so you're not necessarily singling anyone out. And you could invite them to follow up with you. You could say, you know, working on yourself is a huge part of success with weight loss or whatever your fitness goal is. And you're available. And you may not feel like you're an expert, but just an outside person to look at it objectively can be really valuable. So you could offer to do that one-on-one offline. Or you could ask for permission and you could say, you know, I've been working a lot on this and I've been doing some reading on negative thoughts, and it just kind of jumped out at me as I was listening to you or as I saw what you posted. I kind of was making these connections. Would you be interested in me sharing what I see from the outside? And they'll either tell you yes or no. And if they say no, I don't want to deal with it, then they say no. But chances are they're going to say yes. And they'll probably really appreciate it because obviously you're going to come from a place of love and kindness, and they're going to know that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really, I love how you worded that because it's kind of like how we would word anything else that we're doing. Like, hey, like we have this thing, you know, you want me to share it with you, yes or no?
Right.
And it's a great tool, like you said, even if they're not buying a challenge pack or whatever, like this is a great tool that you can, you know, give to people for them to kind of like change their mindset.
Do you have in mind conversation with the people who are thinking about signing up, and you see like a glitch in their thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's part 2. That's the next topic that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
And I have another awesome idea for that. It's kind of a lot to cover at the same time, so we'll do it next time.
Yes. All right. I don't think we have anyone for next week, so if you don't mind, we'll sign you up. All right. I have to double check, but I don't think we do because I just love this stuff. And then my second thing that, like, as you were talking too, is like my one post this morning was like that black and white thinking, right? Like the all or nothing.
Yeah.
And like going through, like if you're struggling with like creating a post, go through those, because like in our posts, we want to like connect with people. So if you can come up with like certain situations that you do for yourself and like, use, what do you call those, the situations?
The thinking errors?
Yeah, your thinking errors, and creating posts from that.
That's
You're going to have a lot of people go, like I feel that way too. Because I used to be an all or nothing person. So that's what I wrote about that today. But yeah, like using those things like that's really going to have people connect with you. So
that's an awesome idea.
Great.
Yeah.
This was great. Anybody else have questions or comments?
I want to add one other thing. I was thinking it would come up as a question, but it didn't, but I'll just throw it out there anyway. A lot of times people say to me, well, what happens if you can't come up with a response and you get kind of stuck? And it happens. And even, with clients that I work with, we go through the whole thing and they say, I can't think of any other way that I could look at the situation. And I might make some suggestions to say, well, as an outsider, I see it this way, and this might be a way you can look at it. And another person might be ready to hear that and ready to think about it, and they might not. So you can always just pause and just say, well, let's just sit with this. We've learned a lot today, and we've made this observation, and we've connected the dots, and we didn't solve the whole problem today. And maybe you just need to sit with it a little bit, and you might feel differently about it a week later, a month later. And so it's okay. It doesn't always work out perfectly, and that's totally okay. That's reality. And if you think about it, people have been carrying these thoughts around for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. So they're not going to go away overnight. They're not going to undo themselves overnight. And that's why it takes practice over time to really work on it. I'm also, if you get into this and you have other questions, feel free to message me anytime. It can feel a little bit different if you're not used to doing something like this. So I would definitely encourage everyone to take out a piece of paper, and you can just write your own columns and just practice with yourself. Pick a situation and see what kind of thoughts come up and see how you can work through it. And I'd be happy to help you. If you get stuck and you want to feel a little bit more comfortable working on it on your own, I can help you with that. And then you'll feel more comfortable working with your coaches and other people in your groups as well.
And one other question I thought of, have you read like the Personality Plus?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that like certain, I guess, personalities have different like categories that they fall into?
Definitely.
Or it kind of can be all across the board?
I would say probably both. I don't know Personality Plus inside and out, but with any of those personality tests, there probably are correlations that certain kinds of people tend to think in certain ways. They tend to see the world a certain way. But so yeah, I would think you would probably see that. Like if you give that to your coaches, then you might be able to see patterns. Well, coaches who meet this profile tend to have these kinds of thoughts. And so we need to be on the lookout for that and even anticipate it and teach them how to respond to that in different ways.
Yeah, I like that, to anticipate and just kind of like debunk that ahead of time before.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's even happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Anyone? Just me and Carol talking? All right. Carol, you can, was this like from a Google document?
It was Google to PowerPoint, but I think I can send it to you either way.
Yeah. Or just post it in the team, because
Okay.
I think this would be super helpful.
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to do that.
All right. Thanks so much. I loved it. So great.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Thanks for joining.